In this video, I will show you how to track multiple objects using YOLOv8 and ByteTrack from Ultralytics and explain how the ByteTrack algorithm works. I will start off by going over what is ByteTrack multi-object tracking, talk about how does ByteTrack work, and finally go over a tracking soccer players example with YOLOv8 and ByteTrack. I'll be using a pre-trained YOLOv8 model, but if you would like to train your own data sets, you could go ahead and check out this video that I have down here. So by the end of this video, we will see how we can track these soccer players in this video right here. So what is ByteTrack multi-object tracking? So ByteTrack is a multi-object tracking algorithm that allows you to track multiple objects in your scene. So it could be used with an object detector of your choice. In our case, we're using YOLOv8, but it could track each object, and for each object, what it's going to detect is going to have a bounding box and an ID associated with it. So what truly sets apart ByteTrack is that unlike the other trackers, this one actually takes into account of the low threshold. So other trackers usually just look at the high threshold. Here we're looking at both. So later on when we discuss how the algorithm works, we'll see how it's actually using both thresholds into its decision making. So here you can see the MOTA. So what it stands for is multi-object tracking accuracy. So this is the y-axis right here, MOTA. So you can see that ByteTrack is the top compared to all the other ones. You can see it's the highest in MOTA, and compared to the frames per second is the best. But of course, for all applications, you got to run it in your own test case to see if it actually makes sense, because everyone tends to say their model is the best. So you just got to test it out. So how does ByteTrack work? So there's several parameters in the ByteTrack.yaml file, which we'll take a look at later on in our code. But to really know what each one does, it helps you understand the algorithm in more detail. So below is a summary of the ByteTrack algorithm through the steps 1 through 7 down here. So the first thing you got to do is choose a detector. In our case, we're using YOLOv8, and this detector will help us obtain a detection score. So this detection score will be used later on to compare some of our thresholds. But we're going to store each object in T, where it's going to tell us two information. So there's the ID and the bounding box. So what we want to do is compare our detection score with the threshold for each object. So if the detection score right here, as you can see, if it's higher, greater than the high threshold, then you want to store it in D high. If it's less than the lower threshold, we want to store it in D low. Okay, so based on the quality of the detection, we're going to store it in either D high or D low and then use that later on. So next up, we want to predict the new locations of the object in T using the Kalman filter. So Kalman filter is a classical control method that's used for prediction. So this actually relies on that. I won't go into details here, but leave a comment if you're interested in that. So after we use a Kalman filter, we're going to go ahead and run our first association. So the first association, what we're going to do is compare T and D high. So usually when we make this comparison, it's going to use IOU, intersection of union, or a re-ID for feature distances. So what they do is it uses a matching method called Hungarian algorithm based on your match threshold. So match threshold is something that's set in your parameters file that you'll take a look at later on. So what you have is you're going to store the unmatched results in D remain and T remain, which we'll use later on. So next up, we have the second association. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to compare our D low and our T remain using IOU only. Okay, so this time we're not going to use the re-ID, only IOU. And some of the reasons is explained in the paper, but it's mostly due to occlusion. So we want to store the unmatched results into T remain, extra re, so it's a remainder of the remainders. So next up, we have the unmatched tracks that we're going to have, and it gets stored in T lost for up to some track buffer, which is the number of frames before discarding. Okay, so some of these parameters you'll see later on in the YAML file are the actual parameters you could set. So some of them that we covered here is the threshold, this threshold, that threshold, and then the track buffer is like another one. the match threshold is another one that you'll be setting. So just pay attention to how these actually works. So finally, we're going to create a new track called T, and then from D remain, if it's above the new track threshold, then it's going to create a new track. So that's the pretty much the summary of the algorithm. And you can see that this is going to be another parameter that we see in our YAML file later on. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at our tracking soccer players example with YOLOv8 and ByteTrack. So here we have our main function here. So we have a main function here called run detect object and run track object. So for the run detect object, what this is good for is if you want to really understand what's happening and the quality of your results, you may want to run this to see what's happening. So in this function that you can see here, all I'm doing is calling the predict function. So this predict, what it does is it takes in the source here. So what we're going to do is you can see here, we take in the source, which is our video path, and then we have show true, and then some line width 1. So I'm setting the line width 1 to be 1 so I can see everything more clearly, but it's up to you what you want. So if you run this, you can see just the tracking, the object detection only, not the tracking. So this could be good if you just want to see what values are between, could range from like 0.7 to some goes to like 0.3. So depending on how well your object detection is, you may need to retrain it, or you might need to play around with a different model. So this is a good benchmark to kind of evaluate what's happening here. Okay. So if later on we take a look at our next function here. So the next function that we're going to be running is the run track object. So this run track object, let's take a look at this function here. So scroll down a little bit. This is some of the main things that we'll be using, but you can see here we have our track object here. So we have a frame count is initialized to 0, and this is the number of frames that we want to skip to be n equals 1. And we have an image scale that we're changing. So you could change the scale of your images if you wanted to fit inside or zoom in, zoom out. I just have that in there. So here we're starting a capture, so CV2 video capture. And then from here, we have our main while loop. So inside of our while loop, we're going to read in our frame. So this is the image frame that we'll be using for most of our code. And then here we have a new width and height. This is optional, but here I have an option to resize if I want it to be smaller. And then finally, we have the frame count skipping. So it's based on the number of frames I want to skip, I could keep skipping on. So if we keep looking forward, we see this part is the results. So what we have here is we're going to actually call the main tracking function here. So you can see I've made the definition here. What it's going to take is, first thing is a source. So source, we're going to get directly from the frame. Okay, so that's what that is. And then persist is true. So what persist does, you want to make sure you set this. This is pretty important because if you don't set this to true, your frame ID is going to keep toggling because it's going to treat each frame as a new frame. But persist will actually relate the frames together. So make sure that's set to true. Don't forget that. And then finally, we have the tracker. This tracker is what it has is it could be your input to your ByteTrack YAML file. Okay, so that's the file that has all your parameters. So if we take a look at this, this is our ByteTrack YAML file here. So here you can take a look at the different things you can set. So here you have the tracker type. Right now we have set it to ByteTrack, but there's other things that you could set as well. And then here is the high and low threshold that we talked about in the algorithm. So here we have it set to 0.25 and a low threshold of 0.1. And then we have the new track threshold set to 0.6, track buffer of 30 frames, and then our match threshold of 0.8. So here, go ahead and play with these parameter values and see what works best for you. Okay, but it's going to be a bit of trial and error, so you just got to test it out and see what's the best results for you. Okay, so continuing on to the rest of the code, if we take a look at this, we see that we follow up after we read it. We're going to take the results, and then from here, we're going to extract our boxes. So from these boxes, we're going to extract out some IDs because boxes contain the ID attribute. So we're going to get the IDs, and then we're going to put everything in the for loop here. So Inside of the for loop, there's going to be a bunch of different objects, each with a box and each with an ID. So from these things, we could go ahead and use some of our CV tools to draw our own custom rectangle and then put our text for the frame ID here. So you could choose whatever way you want. This is just a way if you want to customize your drawing on your screen. And then finally, we're going to go ahead and run our cv2.show of the frame. This will show you each frame and then as well as the updated results. Okay, so if I go ahead and run this, we can see the results in action. Okay, so let's take a look at this. It's going to take a minute to run, and then after it's done loading, we should see it up and running. So here we go. You can see everything is up and running. And you can see that each player has an ID associated with it. And then you can see that players are not included, like this person ID 1 here. You can see that it does pretty good in terms of tracking. So this guy here, ID 1, ID 4, ID 9. These guys are pretty like alone, but you could take a look at these players here that are very close together. They may have some challenge being properly identified, as you can see here. So take a look at this scene in this area. You can see, this guy here, these guys on the top right. There's a little bit of a challenge with this tracking algorithm, but you can see this. Some of these that are again like spaced out apart seems to be doing pretty well. So you can take a look at up here, player like ID 20. It crosses over. It does a little swap. So these are some things that this algorithm has some trouble with. So hopefully you got a better understanding of how to use ByteTrack. And if you found this video helpful, give a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.